Welcome back to The Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and you might not realize it, but one of the most potent tools for resilience and peak performance isn't found on a battlefield or an operating room. It's found right in your bedroom when you close your eyes. For today's conversation, we're joined by Dr. Leah Kaylor, a clinical and prescribing psychologist who spent the last 5 years as the FBI's go-to expert on sleep. Leah has made it her mission to help high-stakes professionals, from law enforcement and first responders to military veterans, understand how sleep shapes everything from their mental health to their motivation and even how they recover from trauma. What sets Leah apart is just how personally she's divided into the world of sleep science. Dived, not divided. I can't read today. She spent a pivotal year at the VA in a sleep clinic where she saw firsthand the unique challenges veterans face when it comes to rest, recovery, and shifting out of go mode. That experience sparked her passion for helping people rediscover the restorative power of quality sleep. It's more than just theory for Leah. She's seen the difference it can make when someone finally conquers that sleep as a luxury mindset and starts making their well-being a priority. If you're tired of running on empty, wondering why your body and mind aren't just keeping up, or if you just want to know what you can do to finally get real rest, this is the episode for you. Dr. Kaylor is here to break down the science, bust some myths, and give us actionable strategies you can use right away. Leah, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation with you and see how not only the audience can benefit from your advice, but me personally, because this is still a big struggle in my life. So first question is, where did you grow up and what set you down this path? What shaped your path into the world of psychology, particularly sleep?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, called Uniontown, Pennsylvania. Very tiny. No one ever knows of it. So I was born and raised there. And then what got me started in psychology, I took a class in high school and I really enjoyed it. It was kind of like a Psych 101. However, I didn't think that was the path I was going to go down. I thought that I was going to do medicine. That's what I really thought I was going to do. I thought I was going to be an anesthesiologist. And so in high school, we had the assignment of going and finding someone to shadow. And so I had the opportunity to shadow a orthopedic surgeon. So not the same thing, but still like being in the medical industry and like being in the hospital. So I got a chance to spend some time with them and like got permission to be fully gowned up, go into the operating room and watch a reconstructive knee surgery. And like I was having a ball, like imagine like a little high school student, like I'm fully gowned up, like I'm in there kind of just in the back, like observing. And like it's cool, we're playing music, like this is fun. And then all the power tools are going. And then just like a piece of bone like flips up like onto the surgeon's gown, like slow motion. And I'm just like, I don't feel so good. And then like later wake up in like the like nurse's office with a cookie and a juice box. So that was a very quick sign that medicine probably wasn't gonna be the way that we went down. And so after like a few more experiences like that, because I am very persistent, I finally decided, okay, medicine it just simply isn't going to be it. Bodily fluids and I just don't get along well.
Yeah. So psychology became the path. And how did you determine? So are you a clinical psychologist or a research psychologist?
I'm a clinical psychologist, but I have a PhD. So there's a very big research basis behind it. So you do a thesis, you do a dissertation, and I also just love research. And so I'm not technically a research psychologist. I'm a clinical psychologist, and then I'm also a prescriber too, which is very cool.
Yeah, because after the Army, I fell in love with psychology like you did. Carrie Margolin was my professor. She's like well known in kind of the Western side of the country, probably in that whole world. And she was a really good mentor to me. She challenged me and one of my other buddies that was in the same class to actually write a paper on Philip Zimbardo's PTSD time perspective and how it relates to veterans and all of this, and then submit it to the WPA. And we actually got picked up to present at WPA,
Nice.
which was really awesome, but we never got to do it because that was 2020, and we all know
I was going to say COVID.
100th anniversary of the WPA in San Francisco, and and she was pretty adamant that like when you do get picked up to present at WPA, it's like a one-way ticket to grad school. And I was like really excited because I grew up like people telling me I wasn't capable, I would never make anything of myself. And so like, it was a huge deal to me. Like I could be a doctor. And so that's how I learned the difference between clinical and research psychology. She was really awesome mentor in that, like, it's so much more competitive to get a spot into a post-grad, clinical psychology,
Oh, yes.
school than it is a research psychology. And so it's awesome. And then also, I do know of Uniontown. My brother lives in Waynesburg. So
Oh,
yeah, he went to
wasn't
college there.
expecting that one. Okay.
Yeah, my stepdad and all that. He's born and raised in Pittsburgh, so
Wow.
stomped around that city quite a bit. And then my
Okay.
brother and his kids are in Waynesburg, and pretty cool.
Small world.
Yeah, really small world. I find doing this show, I meet people. It's the world just gets smaller and smaller. It's
Yeah.
crazy. So your early interest in psychology, like that transfers, I mean, even into neuroscience and a passion for behavioral health. Like, what is it that fascinates you about it? Is it kind of like my career? I love like understanding how people think.
I like explaining why. So I think we're like similar, but like different sides of the coin. So I work with a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, and yet I can tell you things all day long, but I believe that if I tell you like the science behind it and the why and what's happening in the brain and what's happening in the body, then you might be like, "Oh,
For
now
sure.
I get it. That makes sense." So like, for example, we talk about blue light all the time like, "Oh, blue light's bad, blue light's bad." Okay, well, let's actually talk about why. So blue light during the day is fantastic. Blue light will come from your screens, your overheads, your laptop, your phone, and that comes into the eyes and it tells the eyes, okay, it's time to be awake, it's time to be alert. So that's great all day long. But where blue light starts to become problematic is when we get closer to nighttime. So blue light is the same wavelength as sunlight. So whenever we're getting close to bed and we have our phone and it's like, you know, 2 inches
2 inches.
away from our
Yeah.
face, and we've got the brightness going, then that light is coming into the eyes. We're going to get sciencey for a second, back to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, back to the pineal gland, and it's saying, hey, turn off the melatonin because sunlight's coming into the eyes. Like, this is not the time to be making melatonin, which is our like sleepiness hormone. So I think it's important that when we describe the science behind something, people are like, oh,
Well, now I
and now
understand it so
now
much
I get
better.
it. Yeah,
Instantly right now. Thank
right.
you for that, because I actually just saw an article a couple of weeks ago about blue light's not as bad as you think it is. Well, this makes a whole lot more sense. Obviously, I didn't bother to go read that article. I was just like,
Well, there you go. 30-second review.
there's so much just stuff, right? Like, so how
Yes.
can you actually know? And then I knew that this was coming up, so I was like, I'll just ask her, because she does this for a living, and
Hmm.
so I'm sure she'll have an answer that I can understand and everybody else here can understand. So that makes a ton of sense. Also,
Yeah.
it also makes sense with like, if you think early human evolution, we would go to bed when the sun went down and get up when the sun would rise, and like, I'm sure that we're going to talk about this later. That's like a very important part of getting quality sleep. So,
Yes.
it's just fascinating. I do have a question on the blue light.
Okay.
Do Kindles count? Are they emitting blue light, or?
So that's a great question, and I wrote a book. It's coming out on October 1st. It's called The Sleep Advantage, and I know that people are huge Kindle lovers. So I wrote in the book specifically about Kindles because I know that that's, if you're a hardcore reader, you've got a Kindle. And when I was doing my research, I couldn't find a solid answer because I know that the Paperwhite advertises that they've got some type of different backlighting system, but I was not able to find like a true solid answer from Amazon who makes Kindle. So they advertise that it's different. And also, too, visibly, it does look different.
It's definitely the Paperwhite, especially, for sure, because that's
The
what I have.
Paperwhite looks different. Yeah.
That,
So I would say, first and foremost, if you're reading a regular old school paper book is best, and then I would say a Kindle is probably a little bit more eye friendly, and then an iPad or something else or your phone that you're reading on that the just looks visibly different compared to a Paperwhite.
well, I appreciate you clearing that up. You've done a lot in your career before landing where
Yeah.
you're at now, and you've built your career in clinical psychology. Walk us through kind of your journey. Where did you start in the psychology world, and how did you end up with a focus on sleep and then ending up in the position that you're at now? I know you did some work for a year at the VA, which was very
Mhm.
eye-opening for you, and so I know that had to be a big part, but there's a bunch of
Yes.
steps you took before you got there.
Oh my God, a million steps. Yes. So I started thinking I was going to do medicine. That very swiftly did not work. The rug was pulled out from under me. So I decided, okay, like let's shift gears. So I went to Ursinus College and I decided to study psychology there. So I got a bachelor's degree in psychology. And then I knew that that wasn't going to be it. And as you discussed earlier, it is very challenging to get into PhD programs. And sometimes people do go directly from undergrad into a PhD program. I applied to a ton of them and again was rejected. So I'm like, all right, well, let's switch gears. Let's figure something else out. So I ended up getting a master's degree in forensic mental health counseling first. And I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice and I absolutely loved it there. I knew that I was going to be doing something with forensic work. I just hadn't fully nailed it down yet. So when I was at John Jay, I did a lot of research there. So John Jay is known for having basically like the absolute rock stars in the field of forensic psychology. Like anytime you're watching like 60 Minutes or a documentary or something, like that's usually one of the professors from John Jay on there, or they're writing the textbooks. So these are incredibly impressive people. So I just felt so grateful to be there. And while I was there, I did a lot of research actually on sex offenders. So that was the lab that I had gotten into. I was looking for anybody to mentor me in research. And so that was the lab I got into, and very grateful that mentor is still a mentor to me today. And so I just got a chance to start really digging deeply into forensics. And so that was more focused on the offender side.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, I know that I still want to do forensic work, but I don't know if I want to do the offender side. So then I got into St. Louis University for my PhD in clinical psychology. And while I was there, I kind of flipped things on its head and I did a lot more work with folks who had been, and this was more so like learning how to do trauma therapy for individuals. And again, like I was attracting a lot of folks who had been sexually abused either as children or adults. So that was a big piece of it. So again, like still forensic work, but still didn't think that that was like the exact fit that I wanted. So in order to complete your PhD, you have to go on like a residency year. So it's like one final year where they get you to do lots of different skills, lots of different rotations, lots of different populations to make sure that you are very, very well rounded before putting you out into the world to go be a psychologist and stand on your own 2 feet. And that's where I matched at the Memphis VA Medical Center. And I just had such an amazing experience there. I'm so grateful to have been there and all the rotations that they offered. And one of the very first things that we do when you get on your you arrive there is that everyone, so all the postdocs and all the interns, we all come together in a room, and it's kind of like the sorting hat. Like we have to figure out who's going on each of the rotations because there's only so many spots and so much time in this one year. And there's going to be some compromise, and hopefully we try and make everybody happy. And so I had been drawn to the Memphis VA Medical Center for a few specific rotations, and there were a few that like surprisingly were forensic. So there was like a community emergency services rotation where I was really excited about that. There was another one that was actually doing forensic evaluations in the court. They were like partnered with a outside entity. So those few like really attracted me. And then the other ones I was a little bit more willing and flexible. And so I can't remember if I actually wanted to be in the sleep clinic or not. That's what's funny about it. But I couldn't be more grateful that I got that rotation because it just opened up my eyes to how many people are sleep deprived, how much sleep touches literally every single aspect of your life. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to dig into a lot of different things. So I was helping people who were struggling with sleep apnea because a lot of my veterans had this fear, of wearing something on their face. Like that, it makes sense. Like, why would we want to sleep with something like that on our face, especially if there's ever been any type of traumatic event or anything? Like, again, that's just weird.
Yeah.
So a lot of people struggle with that. And sleep apnea is a huge thing. And, we can talk about that when it goes untreated, like how many problems then that can start to create and snowball on its own.
I speak from
Yes.
experience.
Yes.
And I'm going through it again because I lost a bunch of weight. And so
Okay.
it's still, the pressures are wrong, but like also
Mhm.
it's just, man. And that, to your point, putting a mask on your face, it took me 7 months before I
Yep.
could get through a whole night without subconsciously or just in my sleep ripping it off and it's on
Yep.
the floor just running. So I totally understand. From experience, my own experience.
Yes.
And I get to go through it again. I have another sleep study on the 21st. So
Okay.
like wonderful that we get to go through this again.
But it's important, right? Because you said
It
like
is.
things change, you lost weight. And so as annoying as it is to go somewhere and sleep overnight that's, uncomfortable and everything else, it's important for you to have all of your settings set appropriately and uniquely to you.
Because even when I was heavier before I lost the weight, when I did get used to the machine, quality of sleep was so much, just noticeably better.
It's
Just
night and day.
night and day. And I'm
It
like
literally
people are like,
is.
how do you sleep with that thing on? I was like, look, dude, I can't imagine not sleeping with it on at this point. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I know part of my issues with sleep now are I'm not using machine because the pressures are so off that I wake up doubled over with so much air in my stomach.
Yeah.
And then, the sleep doctor's like, hey, that's dangerous. You probably shouldn't do that anymore. And I'm like, well, like now my sleep's suffering. Like, so totally get it. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point, right, like taking that much time to learn how to sleep with it on, that's one of the many things I was doing at the VA was I had a special class where people would come in and we would teach relaxation skills. We would practice putting the mask on, just being awake, being in the daytime, and just having the mask on, not even turning the machine on. So just slowly desensitizing people to being able to wear the mask because it can be very anxiety provoking or claustrophobic for folks. I mean, I would say for most people, even if you've never been through something traumatic with some type of like face covering on.
It's awful. It's awful. Particularly like my favorite part, my least favorite part, I guess, was determining which style mask is going to work.
Yes.
And for me, it's a full face all day
Okay.
long because when I put just the nasal ones on, I feel like I'm suffocating.
Okay.
It's ridiculous. It's the worst, absolute worst feeling that I've ever had in my entire life. Almost, I guess, kind of like what you would equate drowning would feel like. It's insane. So I know these struggles well, and I'm glad we get to have this conversation because
Yeah.
these are real struggles. And I wonder often how many times people are just afraid to go get checked for sleep apnea.
Yes.
I think a lot more people have it and would benefit from getting on a machine than don't. And it's interesting.
100%. Yeah. And it is so important and it's so incredibly underdiagnosed. And even if people suspect that they have it, you're exactly right that it can be a lot of time and effort to try and set up an appointment, or if you have to go to a clinic or a hospital to have an in-person sleep study done. Like those are a lot of hurdles that people don't necessarily want to go through. And they may think, oh, well, it's no big deal. Like it's just snoring. And so that's also why I devoted 3 chapters in my book to obstructive sleep apnea and like various different things that you can do and what it feels like to have an at-home study, to have a hospital study. And just also too, I like to scare people a little bit. We talked about the science earlier, but I also like using a little bit of scare tactics because if you don't take care of this now, your risk for uncontrolled hypertension, for cardiovascular issues, for stroke, for sudden death. I mean, the list goes on. And the longer that these things are left untreated, the worse it's going to get. So I totally understand people having this fear and wanting to brush it off and thinking that it's nothing. But in actuality, and just like what you said, a lot of people, once they get their CPAP and they kind of get into the groove of it, game over. Like, this is it. We have figured it out. We've cracked the code.
Well, and the best thing for me is when I got out of the Army, they switched me, the civilian provider switched me from CPAP to BiPAP.
Yeah.
What a game changer that
Yes.
was, because now it's not just constantly forcing air into my mouth. It's matching my breathing pattern, and it only really forces air into you when you stop breathing, the way I understand it. And I'm probably wrong. I don't have a degree in this, but just my own experience using it. And that's the problem now is they're telling me I might need to just go back to CPAP. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I would hope that I lost 100 pounds. Maybe I can get rid of this. But also, I remember that first time I went to that civilian provider, and he was like, CPAP's not right for you. He's like, he told me stories about, I have professional athletes that I work with that struggle with sleep apnea. It's not necessarily weight related. It's physiology related.
Yes. And that's an excellent point for our listeners to make sure that they know, is that it doesn't necessarily mean if you're overweight, even kids have sleep apnea, actually, like, believe it or not.
That's crazy. So sleep isn't the first thing that people associate with mental health. However, you discovered that it's a big factor.
Gosh.
And so how did you arrive? Obviously, I think I kind of know and can surmise how you arrived at this, working in that clinic and all of that. But like, what really was the tipping point that like kind of led you to connect the dots between sleep and mental health?
Well, I would say the way that I really started to capitalize on this was one of my very first days in the bureau. I had a supervisor who was like, hey, Leah, what's going to be your thing? And, I think as a society, we're doing better whenever it comes to mental health. And I think like the younger generations right now are much more open and willing to talk about how they're doing, to go to therapy, which is fantastic. Again, that's our very young generation. Like right now, I would say like people who are in like middle school, high school, like young adults, like that's the generation that I'm talking about. And like wonderful, I'm glad to see what the world will look like as they continue to prosper. But in the time when I, very first started working at the Bureau, I knew, okay, mental health stigma is a thing, let
Big time.
alone mental
Big time.
health within law enforcement, let alone mental health within the most elite law enforcement agency in the entire world. And so I thought, okay, there, and this still holds true, even though we do a ton of education about it's okay not to be okay. We have people like me, psychologists, who are on staff here to help you. You don't have to pay for our services. And yet I think that there are just still so many people who are hesitant about it, and I think that there's a lot of myths about, oh, you'll lose your clearance, you'll lose your gun, you'll lose your badge. Okay, we would much rather see you seek help and get help and address things early on before letting it spiral down. And then eventually, like, you're getting yourself into hot water because you didn't take care of things early on. So what I had said to that supervisor at the time was, hey, I just got off of a rotation at the sleep clinic. I learned an insane amount of things about sleep. Why don't we go with sleep as my thing? And then as people learn more about it, we start to develop that trust. We start to develop that familiarity. Like, I'm not that scary. I'm not going to ask you to go lay on my couch and tell me about your childhood. Like, it's okay. Maybe we'll get there. I don't know. But I figured this would be a great way to open the door for people to eventually talk about mental health issues. Because everyone, I don't care who you are, everyone can relate to having a poor night's rest. You have a new baby, you have chronic pain, you're getting over a cold. It does not matter. Everyone at some point in their life can relate to having a shit night's sleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's how it started.
And to your point, there's a reason that stigma exists. I watched it my whole career. I watched careers get ended to go get help for mental health. So our generation, particularly my generation, I don't know how old you are. So I saw it happen to some of my mentors, to some of the best leaders, like, hey, I've got a problem. I need to go get help. And I think I'm trying to be an example because I've done a lot of incredible healing over the last 2 years, and using my platform to say, hey, it's not weak to seek help for these things. In fact, being vulnerable is the strongest thing that you can do. And so I think there's I'm not the only one from the military kind of creator space that's out here delivering this message.
Yeah.
I was in the same boat. I was at rock bottom, ready to run my Harley into a tree at 120 just to get it over with, because everything is not right. And so that stigma does exist. And I'm glad that I hope that you're starting to see that change, even, at your level where you're at. And I know it's starting to change through the work that I'm doing, just reaching out to, my brothers and sisters from the military. So I'm glad it's changing.
Yeah, and I hope that we continue to see more and more reduction in stigma, but that's also why I'm trying to put out free education on social media, or to write this book. So, okay, you're not ready to go talk to someone, you don't want anyone to know, but you can easily add this book to your Amazon cart and read it in your free time, and nobody's got to know. So I think also with sleep, there can be an element of doing a little bit of self-treatment and self-help, if you will, before it gets to the point where you need to see a mental health professional. And again, there's no shame in that. I can only put so much into a book versus like actually working with someone hand in hand. But nonetheless, I think that, that's what I'm trying to do, is to put lots and lots of free or very low cost education out there for people, because I get it. Like, the stigma is real. And there's probably so many people who are very interested in working with me, but are just afraid, just too afraid to reach out and
Well, let's help quell those fears right now. So my experience when I finally submitted to my own stubbornness and went to see a therapist, I very much thought, like what you said, I'm going to put you on my couch, I'm going to ask you about your childhood. It's very different for me.
Oh, yeah.
It was, the introduction was, I'm so-and-so, doctor, whatever, and I'm just here to listen. Whatever you want to tell me, that was it. So just if somebody did come see you, what can they expect when they go see a therapist? What should they expect when they come see a therapist? Because I think that is kind of the myth, right? It's like, I'm going to put you on
Yeah.
this couch. I'm going to make you relive all these things that you don't want to relive. And it's like, that's not my experience at all. Most of my friends who are now in therapy and see a therapist regularly, my business partner, my CEO of my AI company, he just started seeing a therapist and had the wake up call. He's like, dude, this is actually awesome. Why didn't I do this sooner? So
Yeah. I love that you've had that experience. And for me, I've spent my entire career with military, with first responders, with law enforcement. So I take like a very no bullshit approach to things like, hey, again, my name's Dr. Leah Kaylor. Like, these are my specialties: trauma, sleep, and now I prescribe medications. Like, let's get down to brass tacks, like what's going on and just getting a good idea. And I get it, trusting someone and telling them whatever it is that's going on with you can be very uncomfortable. Like, I totally get that. And then also emphasizing confidentiality. But, I'll take you down a rabbit hole for a second, but then we'll come back. Is when I was in grad school and I was learning how to be a trauma therapist, because that was kind of what I had identified as my specialty at that time, was I had learned a technique called cognitive processing therapy. And that one is very highly manualized. It's a lot of talking. It is a lot of going through whatever your trauma was and going through a bunch of different modules to kind of address it from different angles. And when I got to the bureau, I just knew, like, this ain't going to work. Like, yeah, very, very, very true. Everyone has their guards up and people don't want to talk. And I get it. Like, even if you're not law enforcement, there are people like out there in the community too, who know that they want the help, but verbal processing just isn't how they want to do it. And so I thought, all right, well, if I'm going to be successful here, I gotta shift gears. I gotta figure something out. And so I became certified in EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and
cool.
reprocessing.
Such a cool experience. Such a cool experience.
But Adam, do you know about brain spotting?
No, and I want to know. So let's go down this rabbit hole because EMDR was awesome. She just put her hand in front of and I did this through a well-known Operation Red Wings Foundation. They're doing this at their retreats. And I think we had 3 sessions throughout the whole week where we did this. And man, it was amazing. Like, I've never had an experience like that. And I'm a huge advocate for plant medicine, which I hope that we can talk about that from your perspective and all of that, because ayahuasca saved my life. Now I have a retreat in Peru, and I'm bringing veterans, first responders, and their family members to this. First cohort is June or July 13th. So we're 38 days out from changing 10 incredible veterans' lives. And I can't wait to do this with them because, everything that I have came from that experience, everything that I've built, the weight that I lost, the philosophies I've developed, this podcast, everything, my knowledge, just the way I take care of myself, what I put into my body, paying attention to this. So I really want to explore as much of this as we can with you. And I know you're a busy woman and have things to do, and
maybe you even do part 2 too. That's okay.
I would absolutely love that because I think where we're going with this next is this show is really to help those transitioning out. I identified early on with this show, kind of my philosophy is, there's 3 main things that we lose when we have, really any major life transition. But obviously my focus is on my brothers and sisters in the military, and it's loss of identity, particularly in that I joined at 17 and was medically retired at 30. So, my authority was my parents until I graduated high school. Then it became the Army. My identity became be the best infantryman in support of the global war on terror for the United States Army. That's it. That's my whole identity for 13 years. And then one day it's all over and I'm left standing there, pardon my French, with my dick in my hand, like not knowing what I'm doing, right? And so identity, purpose, and community are the 3 big ones. Nice. And I noticed, studying my craft, if you will, that the issue is in the transition assistance program. It's a blanket fix for an individual problem. What Adam needs when he gets out is not what Dr. Leah needs when she gets out, right?
Yes.
And so this show is about the transition and giving people examples, stories, of veterans, how they went through their transition. And I've noticed there's kind of 5 pillars that you need to work on when you get out, and it's mental, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual. And when you get all of those kind of I'd say at like an 8 to a 10, you start to live a way better life. And I think sleep
Yeah.
falls very much into the mental, the physical, and even probably the social and spiritual side of it. Maybe
Yeah.
all five in some way or another. So I want to kind of figure out how can you provide some tools, in the transition. I know, for me, my deployments, I did 4 deployments for almost 5 years of combat time. Is just, I wasn't a special operations guy. I was just conventional infantryman.
Mm-hmm.
And op tempo is crazy. You
Yes.
are, I think my whole career, probably 3, 4, 5 hours pretty regularly asleep a night, not enough. You're burning, 10 times that amount of energy throughout the day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that's gone and you
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to turn it off. You don't know how to readjust. So I think that you probably have a lot of tools that can help us from kind of your professional standpoint through that transition. I can give them kind of the steps I took and all the things that I do. I can provide them access to the ayahuasca so you can come have that experience. You're still going to have to do the integration work and sit with yourself and explore all of that stuff,
Yeah.
therapy really. But what can you, because I don't even know how to ask the right questions of you, to provide them tools in the transition.
Sure. So I would say, you're making some excellent points about what it's like to be active duty, what it's like to be in service, and then to go maybe very abruptly from one to the other. And your body's kind of like record scratch. What's happening right now? Like, I don't, almost like a little bit of like a whiplash.
It's like you jump off a train at 1,000 miles an hour and you're just
Yeah.
rolling down the ravine. Like what's happening to me right now?
Right. And I don't think your story is unique at all whenever it comes to being a young adult, brain not fully developed. And this is like what you step into. Like I come from a military family too, which is also, where my heart is and why I have a passion for serving this particular population. And so I saw the same thing in my brother. It's going in like you decide to make this huge life decision when you're a high schooler. You can't even decide like your class schedule, and yet you're making this huge life decision to commit to this and to be in it for such a long time, and for this to be your world and everything that yeah, it's going to be a very big transition. And so if we're talking, I think that you make a great point about identity, and this is a huge piece that I talk to specifically my agents about, because whenever it comes time for retirement, and we have a little bit better of an idea of like age retirement, or again, if something physically happens, but we have kind of an idea of how long people are normally away, or time wise away from when the retirement is. And I start having these conversations very early of, a lot of times our identity fully is being an agent, being a service member, whatever your position is. And then when we take that away, sometimes the wheels fall off.
Every time.
We
Every
don't
time.
want that to happen.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
do not want that to happen. And so getting people to start very early on, maybe that's a couple years out, maybe that's a year out, maybe that's a couple months out, depending upon where you are, and figuring out what are other identities that you have.
Mhm.
Maybe if you don't have them yet, what are you interested in? What are things that you would like to explore? What would you like your life to look like moving forward? And just starting to ask yourself these questions and reflect deeply, because whether you like it or not, at some point you won't have this identity. Not that it's still a part of you, it's still a part of your story, it's a past chapter now, but figuring out how you can move on and have identities that still give you purpose and passion and fulfillment, and still keeping that old identity, but knowing there's got to be other things too.
Yeah, and the advice I give to these veterans that do reach out to me like, well, I don't know what I'm interested in because my whole life has been the military, and I'm like, here's a simple
Fair enough.
exercise, and I really think that this. You tell me if this is good advice or
Okay.
not, because I tell them take inventory of the content you're consuming. What
Yeah.
are you watching on YouTube? What are you scrolling on Instagram? What are you scrolling on TikTok? What do you do when you have a free minute away from the wife and kids to go entertain yourself? I was
Yeah.
like, write all of that down. And whichever one surfaces the most, that's what you're passionate about. That's what you're
Mhm.
very interested in, and follow that. Is that good advice?
That's really good advice. And another question that I ask people too, we call it the magic wand question in psychology. And this may resonate with people, or it may be too challenging. You kind of, I'll say it and then people can figure out, what, and they can do all these exercises too that we're talking about. But I'll say to people, if I had a magic wand and I waved it and tomorrow your life looked like whatever you wanted it to look like, what would that look like? And I ask people to walk me through their day from start to finish. And again, like, suspending reality as far as, maybe you don't wake up and have like Oprah level money,
Of
but
course, right.
But, what is realistic? Like, are you enjoying a bike ride? Are you, making matcha? Are you gardening? What are you going out and hunting or fly fishing? Like, what is it that you would like to see yourself doing?
Yeah. Yeah, I do the same thing too. And so it relates back to what I say about TAP. TAP is a blanket fix for an individual problem, meaning, again, what I need and what you need when we're getting out are two completely different
Right.
things. And I learned all of this through going to get certified as a psychedelic integration transformational coach, right? Because it's
Nice.
very important to me. It changed my life and saved my life. But it really, being a psychedelic coach is meeting people where they're at, and that was so
Mhm.
powerful for me because now I understand everybody walks their own path in this life, and I may be up here, but at one point I was down here, so I need to meet
Right.
them where they're at. And so,
Yes.
in doing that, what I tell them is, you need to define your core beliefs, values, and passions. And when you do that, and I don't have a good answer for how to do that, so maybe you can help
I
me.
do.
Yeah, please, because I did it for myself, and
Mhm.
it's really hard when we do it for ourselves to then outwardly project how we did that for ourselves in something that's somebody's able to latch on and do it for themselves, right? So,
Yeah.
and then once you've defined those three things, I tell them, and this is where TAP gets it so wrong, because they're priming us. They're telling us we're veterans. We're going to have no problem getting a six-figure job because everybody wants to hire us, and that is not the fucking truth. It's such a lie, and it's just priming our brains to think like, just I'm not getting a job. Why am I not having any luck? They're telling me this. So
Mhm.
so what I tell them is define what success looks like to you, because
Yeah.
success to me is 100% total control of my time. And as far as monetarily, I just want enough money that, if I want to go to Europe for a week, spend money like a normal human being on a vacation, I can come back and pay the credit card off without ever having to look at the bank account. That really puts into perspective what you need in life. And
Mhm.
so, can you help me help them do the same things that I've done for myself? Because I'm not very good at articulating that.
Yeah. So this is an exercise that we often do in psychology, and they're called value cards. And I will, once we get off the call here, I will try and find a set of value cards that we can just give to your viewers in like the show notes. And basically, it's a stack of cards and they have a ton of words on them. So each card will have a single word. And what you would normally do in session is figuring out and asking yourself, okay, this card says family. Is family really important to me? Maybe important to me, or not important at all. And you just keep going through all of these different cards and you sort them out into piles. Now, eventually, the pile that is very, very important to us, normally we have a ton of things there. And so then we have to go through again and get a little bit more ruthless about it
Yeah.
and decide what our passions truly are. And then also there's some worksheets out there as far as putting those values then on a scale from 0 to 10 and prioritizing things. Because again, if everything's a priority, then nothing's a priority. So really getting down to it like that. So if you don't have any ideas at all, the value cards are a great place to start because someone has already done that for you and you can go through all of those. But to go back to what we were talking about a minute ago, if people really don't know where to start and what they're interested in, test things out. Like
Yes, explore.
just give
Just
it a test.
experiment. It's so much
Right.
fun. And you
Right.
have, for whatever reason, I feel like people, I call this playing in society's box, is what I call it. Like, there's noise everywhere. And my opinion only, I think it's right. A lot of people agree with me. I'm probably wrong. Fine, whatever. But you have to put yourself first before your wife, before your
Yes.
kids, before anybody else. And what I've noticed in my life when I did this, when I started considering myself first, which is really hard to do because in the
Yes.
Army, I am taught to take care of everybody else first and then take care of myself last. That's a terrible habit to break, and it just is what it is. I played the game, that is the game. But when I started putting myself first, I didn't have to expend nearly as much energy into the secondary and tertiary things down the road because they just fall into place where they're supposed to, because I'm taking care of the one person that matters, the one person that I can control
Right. And that's why we say to put your oxygen mask on first before
first.
helping others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not going to be able to help others. Like if you think about your cup and your cup being full, like you can only help others and pour from a full cup. And that means, again, like taking care of yourself first. And, we use that type of mindset, not just in the military, but also, I have a friend who had told me this acronym before and I had never heard it, but apparently it's very big in religion is joy, Jesus,
Yes.
others, and then yourself. And so, there's a lot of different places in society where I think that we see that of putting yourself last. And whenever it comes to mental health and self-care and being in a state where you are in alignment with who it is that you want to be and the type of life that you want to be living, I certainly believe that it is about putting yourself first so then you can be in a place to help others.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
It doesn't work any other way. If you don't take care of you, I'm writing my transition story book. I've been asked to do that because it will help so many veterans.
Yeah.
Just walking them through the day I was medically retired to where I'm at when I get ready to send it to a publisher or whatever. And I call it kind of there's like false transitions, but inside of that chapter, the false transition, I talk about this mask that we put on and walk around with. Like, we pretend like we're okay and we think nobody can see through it because we're around a community of people who are all wearing damn masks while we're serving, like, period.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're all going through our own shit, and we know, or we used to know that was going to end your career if you go get help for it or whatever. And so we just develop these masks. And then when we get out, we think people can't see through them. Well, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I see directly fucking through it every single time. It's so obvious to me. I know exactly where you're at, whether you think I do or not. And usually I could tell, like, hey, how you doing? Fine. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You're not fine. I know you're not fine because I used to give the exact same answer. And so I love that we get to, it's so cool to me that you're so educated and this is your profession. And like, I have just through a podcast and my own experience come to the same conclusions and the same modalities to get better. And it's really awesome, particularly for me. I know one of your specialties is trauma, a lot of childhood trauma for me, a lot of childhood trauma in, adult authority figures who I looked up to telling me that I was less than, or I was never going to be capable of, I wasn't smart. And then here I am at 40 years old, holding my own in a conversation with a PhD who works for the FBI. Like, this is amazing to me. You know what I mean? And like, I'm just a dumb infantry guy. Like, and I figured this stuff out. So like, I often think we don't give ourselves enough credit and we beat ourselves. I mean, our own narrative in our head, this is the one of the biggest lessons I learned through ayahuasca was like, I am killing myself the way I'm talking to myself. It's terrible.
Absolutely. Like, we are, for the most part, usually our own worst critic, especially whenever we get into adulthood. But think about the brain, and this is the reason why it's happening. I'll give you a little behind the scenes science. The brain is a problem solver. It likes solving problems. So if we're stuck in this, I'm stupid, I'm an idiot, I can't believe I did that, then the brain is like, oh, let me show you other times when you felt this way too, because that's what the problem it thinks that you want to work on. So it's like, remember when you felt like a dumbass doing this, and remember that time that you made a fool of yourself like this, and it just keeps bringing you these examples because it thinks that's what you want to work on. And so it makes sense that the brain is doing this. We need to change things. We need to rewire. And the brain is beautiful in that it's very plastic and that we can do that.
I think one of my favorite examples of that is I'm sure you probably know about it, that ice experiment and kind of shouting obscenities across the world. I think it was in the United States and Japan they did this. And like, they talked to the ice nice, or the water before they froze it nice, and they talked to the water before they froze it, terribly. And there's visible changes in the way that it freezes and the patterns that it makes. And I was like, well, if that doesn't tell you that the words that you tell yourself have power over how you're going to vibrate at a certain frequency in this life, then I don't know what will convince you, but like, changing my internal monologue is probably the best thing I ever did for myself.
And it takes time, right? Like, people are going to be listening and they want to know how to do it. And I would say this is a very, very simple exercise. I call it the 3 C's. So when you're thinking, and this will be hard because if you're not used to doing this, this is going to be a challenge. Just like going to the gym, you don't go to the gym once and then expect to walk out of there with a 6-pack. You have to practice. So with the 3 C's, the first is catch it. So catch yourself talking to yourself like this. Catch yourself being nasty to yourself, saying all these mean things. So we do that as soon as we possibly can, and we put a stop to it. And then the next C is check it. Check, is this true? Like, why am I saying this? Is this 100%? Is all the evidence pointing to that this is true? And then the last one is change it. So can we change this to be a more adaptive statement? Can we change this to be a little less rough? Can we change it in a way that is a little bit nicer to ourselves or friendlier to ourselves? And that, doing it over and over and over again, and you can use this with lots of different examples, will be a way that you start to rewire the brain.
Oh, and I do this all the time.
Yeah.
I instantly I catch it pretty quick now, and then
Good. It takes time.
oh yeah, it took me a long time to get
Yes.
through that. But when I do catch it, the next thought that I have, or I tell myself, is, Adam, you cannot talk to yourself like this. You just can't do this. Like, that's not okay. And then I explore, why am I talking to myself like this? And so, maybe a little bit different than your 3 C's, but my own process that I've
Still the
developed
framework.
through practicing this. And so, Leah, we're running out of time, so I want to talk about the sleep stuff. And if you're willing to come back for part 2, I would love to dive into more of your thoughts on plant medicine, some of these other healing modalities like mindfulness, meditation, breath work, grounding, abundance mindset, growth mindset stuff. If you're willing to come back, I know you're busy.
Absolutely.
But I would love to, because I think, well, I'll just say, I think when this comes out towards the end of July, this is going to be probably my most powerful episode yet, because these are all the things that I talked to my audience over the last 2 years of building. And I think these are going to be the most profound kind of insights that I haven't been able to articulate to my audience the way that I want to. Yeah. And, I also think there's an element of people think I'm full of shit. Like, I really do. And,
or are you just telling yourself that?
No, because I get the conversations, particularly around plant medicine, that's hippie, that's woo-woo, that's crazy. And I'm like, well, how can you argue with my own results and everything that I have done for myself, the opportunities I've created for myself, the things that I've built, the conversations that I've had, the philosophies I've developed over the last 2 years from that experience? That's not an accident. Like, it's not that crazy or woo-woo. So I do think there's an element of me telling myself that. I'm way over that now, particularly having a plant medicine retreat in Peru and actually leading other people to this. And just even in the pre-retreat signal chat that we're going through, seeing what I'm able to get out of these people and just see the healing that they're already doing without having gone to the retreat. I've squashed a lot of that, but I do get it. I just did a podcast with a guy a week ago who was like, that shit's that's crazy. It's woo woo. I don't want, by the end of the podcast, though, I totally changed his mind, and now he may be coming on a future retreat. So,
and I think that a piece of this, though, too, is people are afraid of what it is that they don't know.
Yeah, it's 100%, because I was terrified of it before I went.
I think that a lot of people, like, if it's, and it's getting more and more mainstream, but I think a lot of people are afraid and resistant, and it comes out as negativity because of what it is that they don't know. And this, we talked about this earlier, and this is a huge piece of work as psychologists, but work with anyone, is meeting people where they are. And if they're not there and they're not ready, I'll be here. And when you're ready, come on back.
And that's what I tell them about the plant medicine retreat. Like, I am, the intention is to run this for the rest of my life. I will be involved in that space for the rest of my life. And we're going to do this as long as we can fill spots on a monthly basis. And you're going to have the opportunity, because I am not going anywhere. That is my promise to you. And that is my version of meeting them where they're at. So the door is open when you're ready. Right. All you have to do is walk through it. And I'll be here to hold your hand and take care of you the best way that I know how, because I want to give this gift to you, if you will.
Exactly.
Anyway, let's talk about sleep. My issue with sleep, I think, can be a good example, because I think probably a lot more of the community that I represent, or am trying to represent as best I can, probably suffer for this in the same way, and they just call it sleep issues. I don't particularly have a problem staying asleep and getting quality sleep when I do get to sleep. It is like the second, no matter what time my bedtime is, no matter how many times I cut out screens, the second my head hits the pillow, my brain goes 1,000,001 miles an hour thinking about all the things either I didn't accomplish or the things that I need, future thinking. And it will be 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of staring at the ceiling, closing my eyes, tossing and turning. Then I start beating myself up like, you are supposed to be in bed. Don't get up and go walk around. I've tried yoga before I go to bed. I get up frequently and go stretch because I think that's going to help. What am I doing wrong here?
Okay. So whenever it comes to the bed, we want the strongest association between bed and sleep. That's what we want. So when we are in bed, and I'm gonna use your example, but I'm also gonna talk about other people too. So when I was at the VA, I used to have this big whiteboard, and in the middle of the whiteboard, I would write bed. And then I would ask people, what are all the things that you're doing in bed? And people would say, "Oh, I'm watching TikTok, I'm watching TV, I'm paying bills, I'm writing emails, I'm doing all these things." So I would write all those things around the word bed and I would draw lines to it. And after a while, I get a lot of examples. And ironically, a lot of people don't tell me sleep. Interesting enough. And I will point that out. So whenever we've got bed in the middle and we've got paying bills, talking to your partner, watching TikTok, like all these different things, the brain gets confused. The brain is very, very smart, but it's getting confused. So it's thinking, oh, when I get into bed, like, look at all these options I have. I have entertainment, I have work, I have fun, I have all kinds of things that I can do. Wrong. That's not what we want to be doing. So when it comes to the bed, we need to reserve it for the 3 S's: sleep, sex, and sickness. Those are the 3 S's, and those are the only 3 things that we should be doing in bed.
So not even reading in bed.
I don't, especially for someone like you who's having these issues and having longstanding issues, no.
Okay.
And this is, and I can give you lots and lots of information, but yes, the 3 S's. So sleep, sex, and sickness. When I say sickness, I mean, like, if you know you're coming down with something, if you got a sore throat, like, all bets are off. Like, go allow your body to rest and rejuvenate and do what it needs to do to, like, fight off the cold or the virus. But otherwise, sleep, sex, and sickness. Now, a huge piece of this, and I imagine that people who are listening are also like, yeah, me too, that's what's happening. So when you're at this level, we need to be taking lots of different things out of the bedroom too that may be, so like, and again, I get it. I used to live in New York City. Like, I shared a bedroom. So I get it, where a lot of people may not have the luxury of being able to take these things out of their bedroom and put them somewhere else. But for those of you who are listening who do, take out like all of your work papers and your work computer. Like, if you're someone who also uses your bedroom as like a home gym, take out your like gym equipment and go put that somewhere else. I know that this may sound drastic for some people. TV, get rid of your TV. Like, the more things that we can get outside of the bedroom, the brain starts to understand, okay, when I'm in bed, I really have 3 options: sleep, sex, and sickness. And probably going to be sleep tonight. Yeah, that's the one thing I can probably guarantee. So I would say that that is a huge piece, but it also sounds like what you're struggling with is what we would call conditioned arousal. So when you are, and a way to break this is only going to bed when you're sleepy. I know we talk about having like a bedtime and things like that, but whenever people are struggling with this and they lay down in bed and then their mind just starts to race, what we really encourage is stay out of bed until you feel very sleepy, like eyes are starting to get heavy. Like, don't fall asleep on the couch or somewhere else. Like, right when you're on the verge of that wave of sleepiness, that's whenever you go into bed, and just start conditioning yourself to do that. Because if you're laying in bed and you're tossing and turning and you're clock watching and you're thinking, if I don't fall asleep by this time, I'm only going to have 3 hours of sleep and I'm going to feel like shit tomorrow.
Nailed it. That's me. 100%.
We need to break that association. So we're breaking the association by getting rid of reading in bed or watching TV in bed. Like, that's great. We're doing that. But we also, the brain will learn, oh, well, I'm laying in bed and this is when we just toss and turn and we think we solve life's problems in the middle of the night, but we don't tell anyone. We need to break that association too. So I would say, first and foremost, whenever it comes to having a hard time falling asleep, I would also recommend having some type of wind down routine. So doing something that your brain knows because we go all day long. And then some people just want to like fall face first and like expect to fall asleep in their bed. Like, it just doesn't work like that.
No. Some people have it like that.
Well, and and that's a whole nother issue, right? Like, I was actually working on this morning. Sometimes people will say, well, when my head hits the pillow, I fall asleep instantly. Well, I hate to break it to you, but healthy adults fall asleep within 10 to 15 minutes. So if you're falling asleep immediately, that's a sign that you're sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of people want to brag and like flex on that. And it's like, well, actually, that's not really a flex. You're actually telling me that you're sleep deprived. So, but it's a different story when, I'm asking you to like get very sleepy before you go into bed. Like that, I'm like trying to get you to transition and also like break poor habits that you have. So I want to clarify that. So we talked about, yes, the 3 S's. We talked about getting everything out of your room that shouldn't be there. But then, yes, having some type of wind down routine. Like, think about it. Like, whenever it comes to kids or babies, like, we don't have a full day with them and then just like throw them into the crib and like shut off the lights and say goodnight. Like, we'll read them a bedtime story. We'll do bath time. We'll put on pajamas. We'll probably read another bedtime story, like get tucked in. Kids have a bedtime routine. And I think as adults, we're like, oh, like, I'm too good for that. But no, the brain does need some type of transitional period between the busyness of the day. And so some easy things that you could do would be dimming the lights in your environment. We talked about this earlier about our caveman ancestors, and like they knew it was time to go to bed because their environment got dark.
Hmm.
We have so many technology now with like lights and overheads and lamps and screens. We need to start dimming all of that. So we're signaling to the brain it's time to go to bed. Again, it could be basic things like maybe you put on some very soothing music. Maybe you like get your lunch together for the next day, but not like multitasking in a crazy way, but maybe you're just trying to do it very quietly, very mindfully. Same thing with like picking out your clothes for the next day. Same thing with like hygiene stuff. Again, taking a hot shower. I hope everyone's doing that before bed, but what that's our body's internal temperature should drop, and that's one of the signals to our brain. So it should drop 1 to 2 degrees, and then it'll fluctuate throughout the night, and then it will raise up again when it's time to wake up. And so interestingly and paradoxically, as we take a hot shower, the hot shower drops our internal body temperature. So that's like kind of a sleep hack of taking this hot shower, then it cools the internal body temperature. So that's another way to get the body ready for bed. But I think what you said earlier is everybody's unique, and that's exactly right. When it comes to a wind down routine, mine's going to look very different from yours. Like I like doing some yoga stretches in the dark with some soothing ocean sounds on,
Same.
but everyone's going to be very different.
I
So
do.
you
I enjoy the stretching before bed. I've tried the, I think is it Huberman who says take a cold shower and then turn it as hot as you can stand it for like the last 2 minutes of the shower. And then it's like a hack because it's really confusing your body, and then it doesn't know how to regulate its temperature. And then you end up falling asleep, I think, faster.
I mean, I trust that he's even a bigger expert than me. So if that's his hack, then we're gonna rock and roll with it.
I think I butchered that. I would have to go back and find, but he's got a hack, and all this. I'm fascinated by biohacking, and it does work. It's incredible. It's cool. I've changed so much about my life by paying attention to what I put into my body and putting other things into my body that I was probably deficient in all of this. And so I like that you're telling me I don't have to have some kind of focused bedtime, particularly as an entrepreneur who controls my own schedule. I don't take any kind of meetings or recordings or anything till 10 o'clock in the morning. And I'm usually up between 6:30 and 7. So, I'm it takes me a while to get sleepy, like you're talking about, but I've been
Yes.
doing that for a while. And so it'll sometimes be, 11, 12 o'clock, but, I do find that I fall asleep better. I think, I don't know this. I know there's kind of back and forth. I'm a big cannabis user for a lot of reasons, for internal introspection and doing deep work on myself because it is a plant medicine, but also for pain management because, I'm a broken infantry guy who's had like 13 surgeries at this point, to include a hip surgery I just had in April. I notice, and I just quit cannabis again on Sunday to prepare for Dieta to go back to Peru, giving myself an extra 2 weeks because I knew it was going to be a hard thing. And it just threw my sleep even like 3 hours maybe in the last 3 days. I finally got a great night's sleep last night. I personally think, and I don't have science to prove that, I sleep better when I do use cannabis versus when I don't. However, I know there's studies out there that show cannabis disrupts sleep. So what do I do with this? You know what I mean? Because like I have my own experience that says, but then I have science telling me no.
So whenever it comes to something like this, I would say again, everybody's very unique, right? Like whenever I'm working with your normal, average, relatively healthy adult, that would not be one of my top recommendations. I would recommend behavioral changes like we're talking about, environmental changes. Then maybe we need to see if this person needs a sleep study. So I kind of call it like the pyramid. So like we have to work up the pyramid and see what's happening. But I also have spoken to people who have had like multiple fractures in their back and this unbearable pain. And when we get to a level like that, you're no longer in that category of that normal, average, healthy adult, then we do need to think about other alternatives. And I've spoken to someone, and again, that's just, I am in so much pain. I have found something that works for me. What do you think about it? And when we get to that level where someone needs this because of some type of other injury or ailment, not because it's fun and it's recreational, then that's where, okay, this makes sense for you.
Okay. So it's not an easy answer, and it's great to hear
It's not
that
an easy
it's
answer.
really not a one size fits all, because I would very much say that I do not fall into the category of a normal healthy adult anymore, right? I've had
Yeah.
back surgery, I've had 2 shoulder surgeries, hip surgery. The biggest danger with this hip surgery is I've been in less pain than before I had the surgery. My pain tolerance and what my brain recognizes as pain is completely different than what most people, like, I often tell people, like, you want to know what pain feels like? I wish I could swap bodies with you for a day, because I don't think you would last 5 minutes in my body. You know what I mean? And so I love this stuff, is so fascinating to me.
And one thing we need to remember, right, is like when we are sleeping and when we're getting into deep sleep, that's really important for us and for the body to heal. That's when the body does its healing of all the damage, the micro wear and tear. And for people who are overcoming an injury, overcoming a surgery, that deep sleep is going to be really important. So, again, everyone is individualized, and I'm not necessarily swaying people one way or another.
Yeah.
But if you are laying there and you can't sleep because you're recovering from a surgery or something along those lines, and you're not getting into that deep sleep, well, maybe this is a solution for you to be able to get into deep sleep. Maybe this is a temporary solution until you're at a point where you're more recovered. But remember, when we sleep and we have a good night's sleep, our pain perception, the way that we perceive pain is lower. So we're feeling better. When we get a poor night's rest, the way that we perceive pain is much higher. So again, everything is going hand in hand. And so which is the lesser of two evils, I think, is the question we need to ask ourselves.
Well, and I'm a testament to that, because I know when I've gotten a good night's deep sleep, because the pain level is, when I wake up in the morning, is much different than when I get a shitty night's sleep. So
exactly.
Leah, we are running out of time. We're already over time. Thank you so much for being here. Please tell everybody how they can find you. And I'd love to bring you back for part 2, because there's so much more we can talk about. And I think it would be, at least for my audience, would be super fruitful. I don't know what you would get out of it other than just being able to help. But, tell them how they can reach out to you, where they can find you, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Leah Kaylor. That's where you can find me on YouTube, on LinkedIn. That's also my website name. My book is coming out on October 1st. It's called The Sleep Advantage. And yeah, I think those are all the things. If you want to work with me one-on-one, I do have some options on my website. So there's lots of options, because again, as we talked about, everybody is very unique and individualized. And so if that's something that people want to explore more, there is an option like that on my website.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Dr. Leah Kaylor, sleep trauma clinical psychologist who currently works with the FBI, but has a passion for just helping our community and the first responder community. So please reach out to her if anything resonated with you today. And I look very much forward to bringing you back for part 2. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at The Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity, or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources, or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.